All right, everyone. I've been away, but now I'm back.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now. And on Instagram, I'm your pal Sully. It's Sully Baseball on the Blue Sky. I'm not on there often, but I'm much more often on the Instagrams where I'm at Sully Baseball Podcast. But if you're following us here on the YouTubes, well, be sure to leave your comments down below. And I always read every single comment, every last one of them. And I'm going to be going over a bunch of them today because, well, it's been a while since I've recorded a live one of these, and we got a lot of things to catch up on. Hey, let's talk also a little bit about today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Oh, that's different because up until like last week, it was you had to win. Let me pull back the curtain a little bit. I took a couple of weeks off. As was on a Christmas break. I hope everyone had whatever holiday you celebrate. I celebrate Christmas. Other people celebrate other holidays. Whatever it is, whatever you did, even if it was saying I'm just going to sit at home, have some food delivery service that is not a sponsor of the show, bring over a bucket of wings, and I am going to go watch a Shark Tank marathon. By the way, I did that too. I hope it was a wonderful couple of weeks. I took a couple of weeks off. I set up a couple of, I had a bunch of shows that I had lined up, and I said to myself, I am leaving the studio for a couple of weeks, and I said, I'm not going to make a new show. The only possibility is if an all-time great baseball player dies, I'm going to have to address that. But short of that, and of course, I get in my car and I see that Ricky Henderson died. I have to just say, a bunch of people have, asked me questions about this year's In Memoriam. This year's In Memoriam is going to be absolutely, when I do the In Memoriam video for those who have died in, since last year's opening day. And I mean, this year is already going to be absolutely, crowded beyond recognition. We have arguably the greatest baseball player of all time is going to be in it, in Willie Mays. Whatever you think of him, the all-time hit leader, Pete Rose, Ricky Henderson, one of the greatest offensive players in baseball history. The likes of Orlando Cepeda, Rico Carty, Rocky Colavito. And so many great pitchers. We had, Fernando Valenzuela, friend of the podcast, Rudy May, Louis Tiant, Hall of Fame manager, Whitey Herzog. It's something else. It's absolutely going to be something else. And Carl Erskine, there's another one. Carl Erskine, who was one of the great links to the old great Brooklyn Dodger days, we lost him. So one of the things I do every year is I do the In Memoriam, but I also I find a new music bed. And if anyone has an idea for a music bed for it, please let me know. Let me tell you a couple of things here. I have a whole bunch of, there's been a bunch of baseball news stories that cropped up, and I'm going to try my best to cover most of them on tomorrow's show. The biggest piece of news is the Corbin Burns signing by Arizona, and the Yankees acquiring Paul Goldschmidt. The Orioles just acquired Charlie Morton. The Dodgers brought back Teoscar Hernandez. So I'm going to go through a lot of those, the pickups, and also discuss tomorrow a little bit, just teasing tomorrow a little bit, talking about why I think every single American League front office, general manager, whatever you want to, whatever they're called now, with the exception of the White Sox, I think every single American League front office should be on high alert, because the American League is the definition of parity right now. There are super teams in the National League. There are no super teams in the American League. Right now, the Yankees are probably the best team. They're the defending champs. But they're not invincible. Talk to any Yankee fan. In fact, I'm going to have Lisa Swan, who's a Yankee fan and blogger and been a frequent guest of this podcast and the Old Sully Baseball podcast. I want to bring her aboard to talk about the defending American League champion Yankees, who look good, but they have gigantic holes in it. Obviously, the Orioles have big holes in them. The Red Sox, the Rays, the Blue Jays, Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City, Minnesota. The A's are they were talent. They were a talented team the second half of last year. The Rangers won the World Series a couple of years ago. It's a Bochy year, so it's every other year. Seattle and Houston, they're mid to high 80 win, possibly low 90 win teams. Really, the White Sox are the only team that I think has absolutely zero chance of going to the postseason. That's why I talked about the fact that with Trout possibly hopefully coming back, I would make him the DH. What the hell do I know? But putting on a bunch of veterans around him, do Operation 2021 Atlanta Braves, and maybe, God forbid, have a team to follow in with the Angels. I did a show on that, and as I said today, I'm going to be covering your reactions and some of your comments, and that episode got a couple of comments. Sick Boy wrote, or Sick_boy, if Moreno could put aside his ego for a moment, he should trade Mike Trout to the Dodgers. Now, Sick Boy went on and on and on about that. Can you imagine the absolute sense of ennui in Anaheim, where the happiest place on earth exists? And believe me, the happiest place on earth is not Angel Stadium right now. If Mike Trout ended up with the Dodgers and he wins a world championship with the Dodgers, just at that point, maybe just move the Angels to Oakland. Just do something. Get them out of there. It's nothing's good. The Angels can't trade Mike Trout right now. I pointed out why for a couple of reasons, but it's like, Trout is signed until the heat death of the universe. He is signed, I think, to the year 3984, if I'm not mistaken. I'm at baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth. And he is signed through 2030. I almost said 3030. That's 6 more years on this contract. Nobody is going to trade for Mike Trout at $37 million tomatoes a year, knowing that his best years are probably behind him. I say this as a huge Mike Trout fan. He basically only has value in Anaheim, where he already is the greatest player in Angels history, which is why they got to put a good team around him. And this is, you're never going to see the American League look like this, where you don't have, and it's cyclical, of course. There have been some years where you have a couple of super teams in the American League. You don't have that right now. So a team in the mid to high 80s has a really, really good chance of making the postseason. And, I know last year the Yankees looked like they had a pretty easy way to the World Series, but Kansas City played them pretty tough. They had leads in most of the games, and a hit here or a hit there in games 4 and 5 of the league championship series would have given Cleveland at least, forcing a game 6. It wasn't like they were blowing teams out of the water. Now, they did their job. They got to the World Series, but ask any Yankee fan, are there holes on this team? Yes, even after signing Max Fried, who I thought was a very good signing, even acquiring Paul Goldschmidt. So a team like the Angels, it's not out of the realm of possibility to say, hey, yeah, slap together enough veterans and see if you can win 86 games and see where that takes you. Which led me to my least favorite comment that I got. I got a ton of comments over the last few days. I'm normally respectful of all of them, but here we go. Channel _35mm. He wrote my. I don't know who it is. I'm not going to gender you. Trout doesn't want to win if it means he has to play a full season. He's perfectly fine with collecting his check and putting up empty stats, evidenced by him re-signing with the Angels. Congratulations. You have given me the stupidest take I've read ever on this podcast. I mean, congratulate. I don't like to call my viewers stupid, and I'm not calling you stupid. I'm saying what you wrote was stupid. He doesn't want to win. Well, congratulations, Spock. You did a Vulcan mind meld, and you can now read Mike Trout's thoughts. This is a guy who plays hard. He plays well. He's played at a level for about a decade that made him an instant, like, write him in ink MVP for each single season. And do you what? Some of the years when he, especially like 2019, when he won the MVP there, and there was some people say, well, should he have won for a team that had a losing year? And my simple response to that would be yes, he should have, because he was playing on a team that was going nowhere in a awful hurry, 72-90 team, and he still put up tremendous numbers and played great baseball. Are those empty stats? What was he supposed to do as he led the league in? Let me look here. On base, slugging, OPS plus. He walked 110 times, got 137 hits, and hit 47 home runs, stole 11 bases, was a silver slugger. He's not trying to win. How do you know what he's trying to do? And the fact that he's signed with the Angels, isn't that what we were supposed to want players to do? I'm always confused. Is a player supposed to be loyal to a team or not loyal to a team? Is a player supposed to say, hey, I'm going to be on this team, the same team that I came up, that drafted me, that developed me, and I'm going to try to win on this team? So he stays with that team, and somehow that means he doesn't want to win. But if he went to the Dodgers, like Sick Boy wanted to do, they're like, oh, he's just chasing a ring. At least going to the Dodgers brings the idea of Dodger fans thinking that this is, they can get any player they want. But if you start saying things like, he doesn't want to win, and that's the correct voice, I'm sorry, I'm not going to treat you seriously. Do you know why? You're not saying something that is serious. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the reactions to the all-time home runs and how some of you didn't agree with my takes. Hey, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, which is French for speak, and so much more. And I am going to be looking at who the best teams are to put a big bet on. Now, let me tell you something. I don't really follow the NFL that much, but I do enjoy playoff time, and I always get into it when a team that hasn't won in a long time has a shot. So do you know what that means? I'm going to be betting on the Lions. Why not? Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. By the way, I want to bring up this comment that I got because, as you know, I'm your pal Sully, and I always introduce myself at the beginning of the show with my name. My name is Paul Francis Sullivan, but I beg you to call me Sully. And for the first time, someone asked something about that. User JV9QZ2BU1R, a very, very easy user handle to remember, asked me, why not Paul Sullivan, who uses his middle name? I'll tell you why I use my middle name. Because there is a wonderful sports writer for the Chicago Tribune whose name is Paul Sullivan. And he has been a writer for many, many years. And when I began doing my podcast back on the old Sully Baseball show, I introduced myself as Paul Sullivan, and I would yakety yak about this and that. And some people would write to me saying, it's interesting you said this on your blog or this on your podcast, but you said this on the Trib. Exactly, which one is it? And I had no idea what they're talking about. It turns out that I was being confused for established Chicago baseball writer Paul Sullivan. Do you know why? Because that's my name. So that's why I introduce myself. I throw the Francis in there. However, Paul Francis Sullivan sounds really, really pretentious. And so do you know what? Call me Sully. All right. I did 2 whole episodes on what I thought the best home runs were for each franchise. And obviously, and I got some help from talking to the good folks of Locked On Rockies, Locked On Pirates. I tried to get some point of view on it, but they're the ones that I picked. So naturally, I'm not always going to, not everyone's going to agree with me. Let's do it. And I got a little bit of pushback from some of them. Daily Bluntathon. Oh, what does that mean? Top Diamondbacks home run. Travis Lee hits the first Diamondbacks home run ever at Magnificent Bank One Ballpark. There you go. And that's one I would not have thought of because I'm not a Diamondback fan. And fans of Jimmy Pardo will know that what Travis Lee really loves to do in the offseason is play the yo-yo. Apparently that was something Vin Scully couldn't stop talking about. Those first game home runs, like Eric Young hitting a home run in the first ever at bat of a Colorado Rocky at Mile High Stadium before Coors Field opened up. So yeah, I mean that's an example of a home run that, as a fan of another team at that time, I would not have thought of. William Steffi 3434, huge fan of both David Ortiz and Raleigh Fingers. I would probably put. Actually, he's a Tiger fan, so we probably wouldn't put David Ortiz up there. I would probably put the '84 Gibby home run over the Maglio, but they're close. In the Tiger home runs, I had the Maglio Ordonez home run that clinched the walk-off home run that clinched the 2006 ALCS. I had that as the biggest one. I had the one that, and as you mentioned, the Gibson home run, not the one when he was with the Dodgers, but the one off of Rich Gossage. Kirk Gibson had a knack for hitting World Series home runs off of Hall of Fame closers. An honorable mention to Cecil Fielder hitting one over the roof at the old Tiger Stadium. Yeah, that's got to be a big one, literally. And probably the ones when Cecil Fielder hit his 50th and 51st home runs at Yankee Stadium. That was at a time when hitting 50 home runs was rare. Think about this. In between George Foster hitting 50 some odd home runs in 1977 and Cecil Fielder hitting 51 home runs for the Tigers in 1990, there were zero 50 home run hitters. That was one of the other things that made the steroid era a little bit a little bit scratch your head, because there were wonderful sluggers playing at that time, and none of them going to hit 50, and then suddenly 50 home runs was a pretty much a commonplace event in the 1990s. I'll get to Sosa McGuire in just a little bit. I had a couple of people point out some a couple of Reds home runs. Scott Campbell, who's an everyday Sully, says, for me, I'm going to go with a Joey Votto walk-off grand slam on Mother's Day 2012 against the Nationals. There you go. I mean, these are examples of home runs that, as someone who's not a Reds fan, probably would not be on there. As someone who grew up a huge Red Sox fan, there was a 2-run walk-off bottom of the 10th home run in 1990 by Dwight Evans. That's really up there for me because I was at the game. That was and there are certain ones that if you were not a big fan of a certain team, you probably won't remember this, that, or the other thing. But there you go. Another Reds one from Scott Horsemeyer, who's one of our most loyal fans that we have, says a Reds home run you missed was Eric Davis in Game 1 of the 1990 World Series. You're right, and that is a huge one. That is a really huge one, Scott, because the A's were invincible after losing the World Series to Los Angeles in 1988. The A's were on a mission, and they lost one postseason game total. One game in the ALCS of 1989. They beat a very, very good Blue Jays team 4-1, and then they, of course, swept the Giants, aided by an earthquake, in 1989, and then they swept the Red Sox in the 1990 ALCS, and they just looked like they were going to be a steamroller. And there was also a little bit of a mission with this A's team, because if they won back-to-back championships, then the dynasty word could be thrown around, because it'd be 3 straight pennants with back-to-back titles. And also, the A's really didn't get a chance to celebrate in 1989. It was the earthquake. I was in the Bay Area at the time. It really put a damper on any celebration and any feeling good about that title. And so for the A's, it was a chance to have the celebration that was denied them in 89. And if they would go ahead and sweep the Reds, which I think everybody thought they were going to, that a win would have been they would have clinched at home, because of the stupid ways that they used to set up the World Series home field advantage. It had nothing to do with your win-loss record. It was National League 1 year, American League, back and forth and back and forth. And Dave Stewart, who was absolutely invincible, he had won the World Series MVP and the ALCS MVP. He was establishing himself as the single best big game pitcher in baseball. And it's surreal, because he was clearly the ace of the A's. Bob Welch that very year won the Cy Young Award. And yet, Dave Stewart was clearly the ace. And Stewart on the mound in Cincinnati, it was an absolute foregone conclusion that Stewart was going to win Game 1. And then Eric Davis hit a home run in the first inning of Game 1, immediately putting the A's on their toes, on their heels, and giving the Reds a sort of an aggressive look. And they wound up beating Stewart pretty well in Game 1. They won the Game 2 thriller in extra innings. And then I guess there's 2 more home runs to throw in there. And that's Chris Sabo hitting a pair of home runs in Oakland that really cemented the Cincinnati lead. But yeah, Scott, you were right. That's a huge one for the Cincinnati Reds. I had, if I'm not mistaken, the Jay Bruce home run to clinch the division. And then I had to have the big red machine represented, and I had the Tony Perez's home run off of Bill Lee in the 75 World Series. And then flip your coin, whether it was Johnny Bench's game-tying home run in the bottom of the 9th in the 72 playoffs, or Bench's 2 home runs to basically seal the 76 World Series. I had the World Series one. But yeah, I was the Davis home run, it was a really great one. And then was it Rivka Meiselman 3375 said, "Did I miss you mention Aaron Judge breaking the home run record?" It's funny. I mentioned the Roger Maris one, which I still think is bigger than the Aaron Judge's, mainly because Maris was defeating Ruth and there was all the pressure on him. I mean, yeah, Judge's home run was a great moment for the Yankees. It was. And we will see over, as the years go by, how it will be you know, how it will go. Um I mean, right now, I hate to say it, if you're, but Judge's legacy right now is dropping that fly ball. And that may not be fair, but it's true. And also, we've had 60 home runs hit by a bunch of players, and it doesn't seem maybe as special as it once did. Sorry, but there's no way Aaron Judge's 62 home runs is going to supplant. I mean, if we're going to have three great ones, I had the Maris one on there, but is it going to supplant the Babe Ruth called shot, which may, whether or not he called it, he was a huge home run in that World Series. The Reggie Jackson in the 77 World Series, Aaron Boone, Bucky Dent, Chris Chambliss, the three huge home runs in the 2001 World Series, the Mickey Mantle walk-off home run, the Tommy Hendrick walk-off home run. I mean, there's so many, great Yankee home runs over the years. I'm sorry. I would put the Raul Ibanez home run over that because that was just more his day of hitting the game tying and game winning home run. I just think is more memorable. I mean, call me crazy. And believe me, I've read the comment section. I have been called a whole lot worse. Well, when we come back, we have a couple more thoughts from some of the episodes that we did, including the discussion of the suffering index. And, well, one of you think that maybe I need to have a slightly different criteria. And do you know what? I'm not saying you're wrong. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy, and one of my favorite memories last year was going to Game 6 of the 2024 National League Championship Series. Saw the Dodgers clinch. The energy and the excitement was absolutely fantastic. I got those tickets to Gametime. Gametime has made it easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And let me tell you, so when I was looking for tickets for the NLCS using the Gametime app, Gametime Picks, I found great views, great deals, and I got the view that I wanted to get. And the super deal, it was really impressive. They got great seats, unbeatable prices, and the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, no surprise fees out of checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? I'll tell you what time it is. It's game time. Okay, let's go through the final questions we had here. I brought up about the home runs because I had mentioned the McGwire home run and I had mentioned the Sammy Sosa's home runs. Aloha Yuhara says, I don't know, man. I think we need to retire the idea that McGwire and Sosa saved baseball is disrespectful to baseball history. Cannot disagree with you more. It is not disrespectful to baseball history. It's accurately talking about baseball history. Now, aloha, Yuhara. Baseball may not have needed the McGwire Sosa chase for you. It didn't for me. I was back day one after the strike. They never lost me. I wanted baseball. And then when baseball returned, the first ever professional game after the strike and the lockout was a game in New Haven, Connecticut with the New Haven Ravens. I was there with my cousin Dave. And when baseball reopened in New York, because I was living in New York in 1995, opening day, Yankee Stadium, I was there. They never lost me. I don't believe in depriving myself of things that make me happy if it's not at the expense of anyone else. And if it's something that doesn't make me happy anymore, I don't do it anymore, but I was that way back then. And maybe you are a fan similar to me that you didn't lose your love of the game, but a lot of people did. A lot of people did, and there was attendance problem, people booing, people saying, "I'm never coming back." I'll never forget all the people back then in 95 and 96 who said, "I'm never coming back." And this was in New York, where the Yankees were very good and very exciting. And even though I hated the Yankees, if you were not a bitter, petty Boston fan, which I think is a little redundant, then they were a likable group. And there were people saying, "I'm never coming back." And many of those same people were sending me emails in 98 saying, like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Sosa hit another one." And for a lot of people who were coming of age, using the rule of 7, if you were just a tiny bit too young to remember the strike and you were coming of age in the mid 1990s, and which now you'd be in your mid to late 20s, 30s, if you were coming of age at that point and starting to follow baseball at that point. For a lot of people, that's what drew them in and certainly put baseball on the front page of the news and was leading off the news. For a lot of people, that's what drew them back. And for a lot of people, that's what drew them into it. And when you look at what baseball was in 1990, after the 94 strike and the 95 lockout, and then you saw by the end of the century, baseball's attendance was rising, baseball's interest was rising, baseball revenue was rising. They were building new ballparks all over the place. They were setting record revenues. What happened in between then? It is disrespectful to baseball history to ignore that. Now, it comes with baggage. It comes with baggage. It comes with PEDs. It comes with, were they cheating? Were they honest? Was this real? Does this sully, not me, but the verb, the heroics of the players of the past? This is something to talk about and debate for years to come. But in terms of bringing interest back to baseball, nope. I'm sorry. You're a good fan, Aloha Uehara. I like having you follow the team and following the podcast. What is it? It's called a podcast. But I'm sorry. Not going with you right there. Not going. I talked about the suffering index. ACM 8437 said, "I do think bad regular seasons have to factor more in here. It's been longer since Cleveland's won it all, but they seem to be mediocre to good most years. Well, Pittsburgh has been hopeless." Well, Pittsburgh is right up there too. I mean, Pittsburgh was what, number 2? It's not like they're neck and neck. Pittsburgh has had a bunch of do or die games that they've lost, as has Cleveland. So I get what you say, and I try to factor in losing records at 100 loss seasons. But in terms of suffering, when do you suffer more? Which is more aggravating if you're a Pirate fan? 100 loss season or Francisco Cabrera? I'm just saying. What would the Brooklyn Dodgers fandom be at in terms of suffering? That's a very difficult question, Mavens Baseball. Obviously, you'd have to factor in that they had their team taken from them. Obviously, the Mets were formed to placate Giant and Dodger fans, but there's that factor that they are named the New York Mets. They are not the Brooklyn Mets. They're the Brooklyn Nets, but it's a different thing altogether. It was the identity of the Brooklyn Dodgers being the team of Brooklyn and the pride of rooting for a team from Brooklyn. Many of those fans had to embrace a New York team and be side by side with the Giant fans who they were, locked antlers with for generations. So, but I'm going to say something very cruel. A lot of Brooklyn Dodger fans are no longer with us. And so for those fans who are still alive and may have adopted the Mets, may have adopted another team, but longing for the Brooklyn Dodgers, I may have to calculate that. That may be one of the things that I add to a new calculation, which leads me to the final thing that I said on here. Maven's Baseball writes, the Angels suffering less than the Yankees. I think you need to jigger your numbers. I'd rather make deep postseason runs than never make the postseason at all. Yeah, again, I sometimes have to make some adjustments, but I do think some of the suffering, and there has to be some factor to having Hall of Fame players and whiffing with the Angels. But I do think that missing the playoffs and losing a razor thin game, they're different kinds of suffering. Yes, the Angels losing 90 games and not even putting a winning product in the field when you have Ohtani and Trout as teammates is terrible. Is that a deeper suffering than the fifth inning of Game 5 at Yankee Stadium this year? That is a philosophical question and might be, it might be worth talking. Now, Jeff Cohen, who is a big fan of the show, wrote and said the Mets should be at the top of the suffering index. Sorry, it's either whether you're using the normal metric, which is Cleveland. And remember, Cleveland hasn't won for so long. The Mets didn't exist then. They beat the Boston Braves. Okay, I mean let's pump the proverbial brakes there. And also, the team having been ripped away from them. I mean, that's why I think Oakland and Montreal, and who knows, maybe Brooklyn are the most suffering. So, Jeff, I know you love being a martyr, but what are you going to do? All right, the show's gone a little long, but it's fun to be back. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm doing another show. We're going to be talking about some of the acquisitions that have come on in the last few weeks, and then sometime this week, Lisa Swan and I are going to be talking about the Yankees and the fact that the defending American League champions have made some very good moves this offseason, but they're still a flawed team playing in a flawed league. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about viewer questions, all-time home runs, and saying, yeah, Sosa McGuire did save it. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan, not of the Chicago Tribune, but please call me Sully.